Hello and welcome to the Not That Oscar podcast. I'm your host, Oscar. You might know me from TikTok. If you don't, check me out. Linked in the description. We just hit 5,000 followers, so thank you very much for that one. Today, we are talking about a multitude of things. The box office results for April. We're also talking about the Odyssey trailer that's been released, the most hyped things in May, TV and film-wise, and of course then a little bit on the Daredevil finale at the end and how this might link into Spider-Man Brand New Day. I'll give you a warning before we get to that point because there will be spoilers involved. But for now, let's get cracking. Look, April was a damn busy month. There were 6 big films which we'll talk about in cinema. Of course, streaming had its attempts. I enjoyed thrash. Okay, I like crappy shark thrillers. They work for me. But the main 6 movies in April were Super Mario Galaxy, The Drama, Yumi and Tuscany, Exit 8, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and Michael. So we'll talk about all of those. Let's jump straight into it with Super Mario Galaxy. Now, my thoughts on the movie have been made very public. I think ultimately, for a kid's film, it's terrible. For anything else, it's terrible, except from its animation is kind of good. I do quite like it. I think there's no real emotion to the story. There's a lot of flashing images, a lot of fast-paced storytelling to a very limited story. There's very little depth. So overall, it's kind of just a failed attempt at a movie. But, I understand the age group it's made for. Both the really young kids and the people that just love nostalgia and will feed off purely that and ignore all of its other issues. And it's done them quite well. Okay, we're about a month into its theatrical run with a budget of 110 million. They did pretty well for a budget. I mean, look, it's not the longest film in the world, but 110 million, that's really good. Break-even point of 270 million. So when I say break-even, we're talking about 2.5 times its production budget. This includes the 50% that they have to pay to theaters, and then they usually spend around 100% on marketing again, in most cases. So take a little pinch of salt with this break-even point, maybe add or minus about 10 to 30 million, depending on the size of the movie. Okay, break-even point of 270 million. But it's so far on the box office, these numbers are correct as of the 4th of May, $897 million, which is absolutely nuts. Now, I did predict at the start of the year it would be the first movie to hit $1 billion. I don't think it will be the last. I think Michael will hit $1 billion. I think Spider-Man will hit $1 billion. I think if the Odyssey is good, it will hit $1 billion. Dune will hit $1 billion. Avengers will hit $1 billion. Minions will maybe hit $1 billion if it does well. So there's a lot of opportunities this year. So very good from Super Mario Galaxy. Let's talk about The Drama. This is A24's biggest release as of recent. They did just have Mother Mary, which I haven't had a chance to see yet. But I really like The Drama. It's the only movie I've seen twice in April, and I gave it 4 stars and a heart on Letterboxd, which you can follow my Letterboxd account, by the way, at NotThatOscar, all one word. Had quite a modest budget of 28 million. Now, obviously, that's a lot of money for the average Joe, but in terms of, general budgets these days, the last big A24 movie was Marty Supreme last year. They've had movies since, but the big release, that was a $70 million budget. Kind of crazy. So the break-even point of The Drama was 70 million as well. And so far at the box office, it is coming near to the end of its theatrical run. It's kind of being pushed out by the likes of Michael. Super Mario still in there. You've got Mortal Kombat, Billie Eilish coming through, and Sheep Detectives in May. Box office so far, 116 million. So it's made a very healthy profit, which is great, And I think Patterson and Zendaya did a phenomenal performance. I like seeing Patterson in his British voice. We often hear him as an American, so that was quite nice. I think Zendaya does an outstanding performance, maybe career best. We spoke about The Drama a couple of weeks ago. If you want to go see my more in-depth thoughts about that film, you can have a look back at the episode. So doing very well. Marty Supreme, for reference, 70 million budget, but did 191 at the box office. But The Drama much more profitable because the break-even point for Marty Supreme was around the $175, $180 million mark. Then in April, your mandatory monthly rom-com being Yumi and Tuscany. Okay, this one had a budget of 18 million, which is quite high for what seemed to be pretty bland rom-com. Break-even point of $45 million. Now, rom-coms like this very rarely make profits, okay? They do well, but profit is questionable. Where they do well is either video on demand or streaming rights. Netflix or Amazon, probably the only two in the battle for this one, would have bought the rights to stream this movie. That package as a whole will probably cover their debt. I would think, maybe, or at least help them make their money back. Box office only 21 million with a break even of 45. So well off it. I imagine they might get 10 to 15 million from video on demand and streaming rights. So over the next 5 years, we'll maybe break even. But for now, certainly a little bit low ball for their liking. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Oh, no, that's not next. Sorry. Exit 8 is the one that's next. Exit 8 was a really interesting indie horror development. There's a lot of video game adaptations out there at the moment. Many that I'm not a fan of. I am very excited about Resident Evil. You know, I trust Zach Kreger with my life. Loved Barbarian, loved Weapons. I think Resident Evil, despite the fact it's got nothing to do with the games, it just kind of is in the same universe. I kind of like that, you know? I'm happy with that. Don't tamper with an amazing storyline. But sometimes I do want it to tap into a storyline if I think it's not going to mess with continuity and things. Now, Exit 8, it's a pretty limited story in itself anyway. The premise of the game, for those that don't know, is you enter like a subway station and you can't leave. It's just an endless circle, basically. But every time you recognize an anomaly, you have to sort of seek that anomaly out. You have to understand why, and that will help you escape and put the pieces together. So this indie horror kind of followed the script pretty well. It is just that premise of getting trapped in a endless time loop, as it were, and recognizing the anomalies in the structure. Made off a very, very modest budget of $1.4 million. Had a break-even point of about $4.5 million. Bought in a whopping $43.5 million. Yeah, I'm going to just let that sit for a moment. You heard it right. A probably about $35 to $38 million profit. That's insane. That is absolutely nuts, okay? We've had some good indie horror recently. Obviously, Markiplier did the most recent big game adaptation with Iron Lung. He made that for $3 million, self-funded, and that brought in about $50 million, and he did pretty much zero to no marketing. Little to no marketing for that one. So incredibly impressive as well. And I think this deserves to be celebrated. It clearly was a good adaptation, a good attempt of putting it onto the big screen, and deserves the success. So well done to Exit 8. Probably my MVP of April. We'll do an MVP, an LVP, and something else at the end of this segment. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, Blumhouse don't make the best movies as of recent. Feel free to comment, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube or elsewhere, what your favorite Blumhouse movie is. I liked Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I don't want to cinema sins it because there was a lot wrong with it, but those things that were wrong with it made it quite enjoyable. You know, a lot of sort of wacky continuity errors, just characters doing the most ridiculous things, me debating like, you've got to be the worst parents in the world to find your daughter in a sarcophagus or out of a sarcophagus after 8 years of being missing. And she was in hospital for 1 day and thinking, yeah, we have the facilities to look after her at home. You're not that guy. Trust me, pal. And it didn't work out for them, you know. Spoilers for The Mummy, I guess, if you hadn't put that together. Budget of 22 million. I think they did pretty well with their budget. I think it looked kind of good. Break-even point of around the $50 million mark, 52 million. Now, the movie wasn't great. I give it 3 stars on a viewing. Could bring it down to a 2.5, and I wouldn't argue. But I have fun, so I gave it a like. $80 million. I don't know whether it's their marketing or people just seek out horror movies quite comfortably these days and kind of watch anything. But 80 million. That's insane. When you look at the likes of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, that was earlier this year, a 5-star banger movie. Probably my favorite movie of the year so far. Certainly in the top 3. That had a budget of 53 million and it made 63 million. What? It's part of an already pre-built franchise that people love and adore, and nobody turned out to watch it. I guess, look, the argument with that one is that the marketing on it was pretty weak. some might say. I don't feel, and they released it exactly 28 weeks after, 28 years later, which I don't think helped, because I remember seeing people online being like, I didn't even know they bought a new one out. I thought this was the new one, the 28 years later, the original one. So I think that, we're not here to talk about 20 years later. I could go on forever, but really interesting that The Mummy has done so well. I also think people have gone in thinking that it's Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. There was a lot of marketing from Blumhouse being like, Brendan Fraser is not in our movie. And people like the Mummy franchise. Even the Tom Cruise one has some love around, out and about. So yeah, I guess well done, Blumhouse. Not the great movie, but great for your pockets. And then Michael being the big release of April. I was really excited for this one, and we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, so you can check that podcast out in full if you want to know more. But look, there's no depth to that film. It's basically just one long music video. I will preface, huge Michael fan. Huge fan of the performances in this movie. I think they mostly looked good. The editing was a bit choppy. And the performances, truly amazing. Had a fantastic time. But it is a bad movie. Pun not intended. Budget of 155 million. What? For a biopic, why are they so damn expensive? Couldn't tell you. There was about 15 to 20 million in reshoots, which the family estate paid for. Lawsuits. We went into it last week. Break-even point of a whopping 380 million. But no doubt this movie is going to do very well. So as of a couple of days ago, for you guys, box office, $430 million. Already making a profit. I could see this settling around the $700 million mark at the end of its box office run. It's done, 2 weeks? Coming up on 2 weeks now. It will probably settle its 2 weeks about 500 million. Do another 3 weeks. It's not got big competition in May in terms of blockbusters. There's no other biopics out right now. I'm going to call 850 million. We'll check in a few weeks and see whether I was correct on that one. So pretty strong performances. Obviously, the most profit undoubtedly goes to Super Mario Galaxy in terms of pure numbers. But in terms of percentage gain, Exit 8 is just, through the roof. You're looking at maths here, about 500% profit. But Super Mario is very close behind. It's kind of nuts. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. Any of those numbers caught you by surprise? Let's pivot now. I want to talk about the Odyssey trailer before we mention the most exciting things that are coming in May. Now, the Odyssey is going to be one of the movies of not only the summer, but the entire year. Christopher Nolan has put this together, filmed entirely with IMAX cameras. So it's going to look absolutely insane in terms of scale, and the visuals might be the most crisp thing you've ever seen. But with the most recent public trailer, now we've seen some prologues and stuff in cinemas, or for IMAX you've had like a 7-minute sequence if you're lucky. How do I feel about this trailer? Well, ultimately, I think it looks lovely. As I said, the scale is insane. First time Nolan's properly using CGI for the likes of the Cyclops and such. And I think that excites me. And there's elements of this where I'm like, it's cool. He's tapping into his superhero past, and we'll get onto more about superheroes in Nolan in a moment. But it's not the visuals I'm concerned about, because yes, he's changed some colors that didn't exist back then. Do we really know what didn't exist? This story has been told a million times over thousands of years. We don't even know if Homer was one guy or multiple guys, whether that was even his real name. This story is unsure. People are unsure. But it's not the visuals. It's the dialogue. That's what concerns me. Now, look, I don't care that they have American accents. Okay, whatever. In Gladiator, he has an Australian accent, Russell Crowe does, basically the whole time. Do I care? No, I think that movie's wonderful. It's just, it feels a little bit blockbustery, a little bit Hollywood, a little bit, I don't want to say Gen Z, but I'm hinting towards it. I have some issues with how it sounds and the general feel of it. It's very hard to put into words, but I hope people understand that I think the way it's portrayed is very, very much like a Marvel movie. You know, it's like, here's the big bads. God, don't they look amazing? And let me just dumb down the dialogue for the general audience. I don't really want that, you know? I want it to be a little bit more true to time, a little bit more demanding of the audience. And in a lot of today's films, particularly in streaming, they dumb things down. You know, someone will open a door and they'll go, I'm just going to open this door. Now, I don't think Nolan will be like that, but I do worry the way that this trailer has come across. You know, you have Patterson saying daddy, Tom Holland saying dad. Tom Holland's performance doesn't look very good in the Odyssey so far. It's very much just a lot of baby face staring up, seeing what's happening. Now, we've only seen 3 minutes of clips. By no means does this mean I think it's going to be a bad movie. I think it's probably going to be one of my favorites of the year. But from what I've seen so far, I'm still a little bit skeptical. And I know there's some Nolan skeptics out there, some of my fellow friends. Catherine, if you're listening, and I welcome you as a skeptic. Okay? I think it's good that we demand more from Nolan. He might be the greatest to ever exist. We can argue that, sure. But he could make mistakes. And I want people to remember that. When we see this movie, remember even Nolan can make mistakes. There's a very high chance there's none. But I think Matt Damon's performance will be very good. I think Robert Pattinson, good chance he gets a Oscar nomination for supporting actor, depending on how much he's in it, who they want to put forward. The cast is absolutely stacked. I mean, so this is what Robert Pattinson says to Tom Holland. You're pining for a daddy that you didn't even know. If you're listening, my face is kind of giving the what the helly sort of look. That kind of draws me out of the moment. And maybe in the film it will blow over, but I hate when you get sucked out of spectacles because of silly wording. Now, Nolan was appearing on the Stephen Colbert show last night, and he spoke about the Odyssey, comparing it to modern-day superheroes. And he goes, so the Odyssey, they're the original superheroes. Homer was the Marvel of his day. I think it's very difficult. I think there's very directly this desire to believe or feel that gods could walk among us. And the modern day comic book is kind of our expression of that. Comic book culture, whether you're talking about Marvel or DC, a lot of it comes pretty much directly from the Homeric epics. That's really hard to say. But yes, basically what Nolan is getting at here is this is going to be almost a superhero feature. The tale is being told as of this man fighting the gods. You know, we see this behind me if you're watching. I have superheroes on my wall. That is what majority of modern day audiences are used to. And in a way, I think this will appeal to a lot of those people. And I think it will also appeal to not the history buffs. Maybe it won't because there's some irregularities, which I think is totally fine. But I think it's going to be a big crowd pleaser. Maybe Nolan's most crowd pleasing movie, which is not necessarily a positive. I think that means it could be pretty easy to digest, which will be great in terms of box office. And again, I could be eating all of my words and my hat and so much more when this comes out, because I do want it to do well. I want to make that very clear. I'm skeptical, okay? I'm skeptical. Has that come across as obvious yet? I think so. Let's talk about the movies that are coming out in May, and then we'll get into Daredevil. The month of May is absolutely stacked with movies. Whether they're all going to catch your eye and demand you to go to the cinema is a different question, okay? We kickstart the month in a couple days with The Sheep Detectives and Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, the tour live in 3D. Now, from this weekend, I'm most excited about both of them. I think they're equally demanding my attention. The Sheep Detectives is based on a best-selling book, and I hear it's truly wonderful. The voice cast is stacked. Brett Goldstein, Patrick Stewart, Regina Hall, as well, of course, Hugh Jackman. And then Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, the tour live in 3D, is a concert film, which I'm always intrigued by. I think it's interesting to see how these things get made. They're kind of like a documentary, which is what they are. But it's not only just directed by Billie Eilish, but it's directed by James Cameron, which is really intriguing because I think there's going to be some really cool filmmaking put into perspective here. And the fact that it's in 3D seems an interesting concept. And James Cameron seems to just be doing sort of side quests at the moment while we're figuring out Avatar 4 and 5 and his next movies. He's doing Hiroshima movie, and he's doing a movie called Ghosts of War or something like that, I think. It's a bit like um, Inglorious Bastards mixed with Edge of Tomorrow. That kind of movie. And then into the next weekend of May, we have Mortal Kombat 2, Obsession, The Christophers, all three really cool movies. I think Mortal Kombat, which does actually come out in the UK this weekend, but I think worldwide next weekend, I think it will be fine. You know, a standard action movie. I'm watching it on Thursday, the 7th of May. So if you want to keep an eye out for a review of that one, I'll be posting a review on both TikTok and YouTube Shorts at Not That Oscar. Yeah, fine. I think it'll be fine. Obsession, I'm really intrigued by. Okay, this is a new horror movie directed by a guy called Curry Baker, I believe. This could be his directorial debut, if I'm right. He's written it as well, and it's what else? He's done some short films. He's done some short films by the looks of it. So I believe he also used to be maybe a YouTuber as well, or something like that. Someone can correct me, but the movie is about this guy that casts a wish, a genie wish, as it were, and basically wants a girl to fall in love with him. But when you command someone else to be in love with you, that comes with its horrific issues. A lot of obsession and sort of being driven mad by love. And love and hate is a very thin line, and I think that will cross over. So it'll be really interesting. I'm thoroughly intrigued by Obsession. I think that could be my standout of the month. But then you look into the third week of May, and you have Star Wars, Mandalorian, and Grogu. I'm kidding. I'm not really bothered about that one, to be honest. And look, we spoke about Star Wars recently on my socials. There's a rumor going around, not news, okay? A rumor that Disney are looking at cancelling the last 3 mainline movies from canon. Ultimately, they've not made them enough money. They think people care about the original characters more. You could say yes or no to that. And they basically might just get rid of Rey as a Skywalker. You might get rid of Palpatine returning, all of these things. And sort of carry on from the end of episode 6. Or jump 1,000 years in the past or 1,000 years in the future where Rey hasn't existed or anything like that. So there's potential possibilities they could be doing. Maybe this Star Wars movie will be the last in the main line, as it were. I think the show is great. It's tracking to have a terrible opening weekend. Okay? The early ticket purchases have been pretty low for this one. I don't think it will be embarrassing for Star Wars and Disney, but I don't think it will make them the $1 billion that they think. Unless it's really good, which I'm sorry, I doubt. I love Pedro Pascal, but I doubt. You also have Passenger that weekend, which looks horrifying. This is not a test. And Finding Emily, which looks like a fun romance that I could be checking out. And apparently there's a new Tom and Jerry movie out as well, if anyone's interested in that one. And then the end of May really piques my interest. Okay, you have Tuna, which is a new Leo Woodall heist movie about a guy that has like tinnitus, or like he's allergic to sensitive sounds, and he uses that to help rob banks. Seems really cool. Then you have Power Ballad, which is created by the guy that did Sing Street, one of my most beloved musicals, a favorite movie, probably in my unofficial top 50 list, potentially, is Power Ballad. Paul Rudd, Nick Jonas. It's about a guy that works in a like washed up wedding band, and he bumps into a sort of slowly dying from mainstream pop star, helps him write a hit song. The pop star steals the song. Paul Rudd then tries to, get recognized for his acclaim of writing this song. It looks really interesting. I'm intrigued by it. And then you have Backrooms, which I think we'll do a full episode on Backrooms. That I could be intrigued by doing. It's created by YouTuber, a guy called Kane Pixels or Kane Parsons. He created on YouTube still images and sort of light animation style Backrooms back years and years ago. Created this whole sort of network and lore behind what the Backrooms are. And now has, at the age of 19, he directed an A24 movie with a stats cast. Chiwetel Ejiofor, I always muck up his name, sorry. Renate Reinsver, Mark Duplass, Finn Bennett. Like, insane. At 19 to be directing an A24 indie horror movie that is going to make definitively a lot of money. I don't know the budget of this one. I wonder if I can quickly find that out. Let me just quickly search budget of Backrooms. I'm really intrigued. So apparently it's anywhere between 9 and 15. Oh no, it's about $9 million. Okay. Apparently they built a set for Backrooms that was about 30,000 square feet. Nuts. And cast and crew would actually get lost on set. I just think it's going to be amazing. I think there's going to be a lot of eeriness, a lot of playing on the space, the gaps, the things you don't see. And that really intrigues me about horror. Letting the mind kind of build it, the scares itself. You know, everybody imagines horror in a different way. We're all scared of different things. Letting your imagination do that, letting the space command that feeling, I think that's really cool. So that's probably my most hyped Backrooms, and I am really intrigued by Obsession, and, you know, excited to see a couple other things along the way. If there's something that piques your interest, something I've missed out, let me know in the comment section down below. Before we go into Daredevil, because there will be spoilers for that, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Whether you're following on Spotify, rate it 5 stars over there. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, give it a like. You know the drill. You know the drill. Share it with your friends and family. I thank you guys so much. Spoiler warning for Daredevil Born Again Season 2 and the finale. Let's get into it. Daredevil Born Again Season 2 has just had its finale, and I have a lot of thoughts. First of all, absolutely adored it. I was cheering, I was whooping, my heart was genuinely pounding. I was genuinely terrified during the events of Daredevil Born Again Season 2 finale. Now, you've had enough time, all right? If you're still here and you're worried about spoilers, that's your own fault. The reveal. Let's talk about the reveal. What's bigger, Iron Man reveal or Daredevil reveal? Because I felt the exact same way, okay? If not more, not shocked, but more emotionally connected to the Daredevil reveal. I think him using that as a one-up over Fisk. I think the mind games between Matt and Fisk in this episode was some of the best we've ever had. Yes, we didn't see them fight. We had that back in episode 6, but I just think Matt Murdock is not only as a vigilante and as a lawyer, but just as a man, is so smart with his words, the way he conducts himself. I think it was insane in that courtroom battle. And that's what we loved about Daredevil. Yes, we like him swinging around and fighting people and using his senses. But courtroom, he's half the time he's a lawyer. That's where we find so much joy. And it shows the amount of love that he has for Karen Page to just throw his life away, as it were. He knew he'd get arrested because even though he's a vigilante and the city in general might say, thank you for what you've done, you've protected us, he has, you know, beaten people to the edge of death, which is kind of insane. So he kind of threw that all away for Karen Page, which I appreciate. We'll talk about how that leads into Spider-Man soon. I think Kingpin got off fairly lightly. I'm intrigued to know how into season 3 this will go. He will probably be isolated for a while. He'll feel alone. Maybe we'll end up getting a Daredevil Kingpin duo ship, because they're saying they're bringing in other villains. Do I think they'll have Kingpin as the main villain again? You know, 6 seasons in a row, the same villain? Maybe, but I could see them being hand in hand to defeat someone else, potentially. But I think Vincent D'Onofrio did a standout performance in this one. His breakdown in the court and him whispering and having Matt hear it, and just his physical presence. We got to see Kingpin released from Mayor Fisk. The brute force and strength this man has is unholy. It's actually unbelievable, and I love it. Just crushing innocent people's skulls left, right, and center. Insane. I think the episode as a whole was really, really enjoyable. We also had a few reveals. We had Bullseye going to work for Charles, probably over in Europe, Heroes for Hire. I like that. Some people are a bit upset that Bullseye, you know, he's come such a long way. Why is he working for a man again? Oh, he needs to make some money, doesn't he? So it kind of makes sense. And Charles seems I kind of like Charles. Luke Cage was obviously working for Charles over in Europe. And excuse me. And it was officially confirmed that he is the father of Jessica Jones's daughter. I love that. Goes down a great storyline in the comics, that one. And it looks like we're getting a full reunion of the Defenders. We kind of know from set leaks and Mike Coulter releasing himself, the guy that plays Luke Cage, that the Defenders are back for season 3. I think that's going to be really interesting. We also had the reveal of Muse. Muse being, Heather. I think that's fine. It happens in the comics as well. Kind of like a Stockholm Syndrome sort of event. It'll be interesting to see how she plays into things. She has no physical combat abilities. Does she learn some? Does she just use her pure rage and aggression? That'll be really intriguing. I think there's still a lot of loose ends. McDuffie seemed totally fine about the whole Kingpin Daredevil thing, and Daredevil revealing himself. Didn't seem too taken aback that was Mac's approach. Fine, small gripe. Cherry had a small appearance. Glad he survived. I was worried about him. Interesting that they've got all of the AVTF people arrested. I think that was good. I wonder whether we're going to have Officer Powell fighting the guy that knocked him out. I think that might come full circle, because that's really intriguing. I'd like to see some more storylines around what? Around different characters. Now, I know it's a Daredevil show, and I don't like it when they go completely left field and just speak about someone else for an entire episode. But I'd like to see within the prison how their AVTF task force, anti-vigilante task force, sort of fight against each other, because some people turn their backs on the whole regime. Will Officer Powell realize what he's done? What's happened to Buck as well? He seems really emotionally sort of put down with the whole Daniel thing. How will he react when he finds out Heather is Muse? I think season 3 is shaping up to be really interesting. But how does it tie into Spider-Man Brand New Day? Well, we know in Spider-Man Brand New Day from the trailers that Spider-Man is in prison fighting the Hand. Now, why are the Hand gone to prison? Have they gone to collect Matt? Have they gone to kill him? What's the reason? I think Spider-Man needs Matt's help to defeat plenty of street-level crime. Be interesting. I do think 100% Daredevil is going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day. In what capacity and how much detail, whether we'll get them fighting on screen together, unsure. But, the Punisher has to tie into this all as well. We have the Punisher special next week on Disney Plus next Wednesday. I'll be reviewing that one. Really excited to see the return of Frank Castle. Frank, Daredevil, Spider-Man fighting against a street-level threat in what will be Jean Grey mind-warping people. I think that's really cool. Maybe Jean Grey is trying to get rid of mutants and trying to get rid of vigilantes for whatever reason, and she wants to get rid of Daredevil as well. Maybe Daredevil caused the death of someone she knows. So there's plenty of options here. If you have some thoughts, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll put a video together with all of your guys' ideas, and we'll shout those out, because I think it'll be really interesting. But there's 100% Daredevil is appearing in Spider-Man. There's no doubt about that. I am really excited for the month of May. I think there's lots of exciting things coming. The main thing, of course, being I'm going to Cannes Film Festival. Now, next week, I'm doing a preview episode of Cannes. We'll be talking about all of the movies that I'll be watching, what to keep an eye out for, and then probably a pre-filmed episode the week after. I might have a guest, and we'll be back to normal schedule, and I'll talk about Cannes and stuff on the 27th of May. Speaking of guests, lots of people planned to come on. We're going to be trialing a bunch of different people. Maybe we'll find a permanent co-host, but I think over the next few months, we'll definitely just have a bunch of rotating guests, and which ones you like the most, maybe they'll come back more, maybe permanently. We can have those discussions, can't we? Anyway, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that follow button on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, check me out on TikTok, where I'm most active, at Not That Oscar. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy May. I'll see you soon.